everyone, this is Speak Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be my full spoiler review for Fantastic Four First Steps. And you can also check out my non-spoiler review of the film, and I'll leave some links up in the description. Now as usual, this won't be an actual chronological breakdown of the film, but much more of an outlining of the elements of what I thought worked well, and the elements that I thought didn't work as well within the movie. So we'll start off then with literally the movie's biggest character, and that's of course Galactus. Always a difficult character to pull off in live action, but I have to say they did a really good job here, in both of his look and his size. I love that they stuck very close to his original design from the source material. It was very detailed and textured, but not too overcomplicated. He also sounded awesome with that deep booming voice, again giving that sense of a true terrifying villain. And you look at the construct and design here, and it was a reminder of how good the MCU used to be in translating these characters from the pages onto the big screen. And I thought in terms of Galactus, the best moment or the best scene was when we have the first reveal where the Fantastic Four travel to his ship or its construct, where it looks like he's connected to it to keep him preserved, I guess. And that was a great choice. Again, so good that it didn't just have him standing, hovering around in space, that he was connected to a platform, again, just like the comics and the Silver Surfer animated series. And this was a very good introduction to the overall character, again, carrying that sense of dread and also suspense. I think the next time when we see him, when he's walking on Earth, he's still visually very good, but he didn't quite have the same awe or wonder about him. And that was because he didn't have much development, because this wasn't his story after all. We had to, of course, focus on the Fantastic Four, and this backed up my initial feeling that Galactus just shouldn't have been in this movie, because it couldn't give him the full gravitas that I think we would have got in a solo Silver Surfer with both him and Norrin Radd. We look at the final battle, where Galactus really just descended into a generic monster of the final battle, or the monster of the week, and whilst they had to team up here to fight him, and they're following the comic storyline, this should never have been a contest. The Fantastic Four just shouldn't have been able to have any chance against him. As I mentioned several times, Galactus is really your next level threat up from Thanos. It should take an almighty effort from all of the Marvel characters united as one in order to try and take him down. If we appreciate that the Silver Surfer many times would struggle to beat him, then you can't have the Fantastic Four trying to topple him single-handedly. We look in particular at Sue being able to repel him single-handedly whilst they push him into the black hole, and there's no way that she's powerful enough to do that. So this is the point where I was kind of rolling my eyes during this whole climatic battle. We then stay with Galactus and we talk more about both him and Franklin Richards, and the whole motivation centered around Galactus being compelled towards the baby that was recently born, and this whole narrative for me just didn't work. You mean to tell me that a massive galactic being such as Galactus with all of his power is completely obsessed with this one baby who has been barely born? It just didn't make any sense. Now I do know Franklin Richards is a big Omega level character in the comics. I never found him that compelling in terms of both a character or a concept. I just think he's there whenever needed to reboot or realign the whole universe. It's very similar to what we got with the DC when we have Flash tapping into the Speed Force and rebooting the entire continuity. I just think it's a very cliched and very boring idea. And to be honest, all of this longing for Franklin is just a setup for Avengers Doomsday, where we saw particularly at the end credits, where it's clear to see that whatever happens, we're going to get some clear universal changing or reconfiguration in order to reboot the MCU that will probably propel the younger version of the X-Men. But all of this again just undercuts Galactus, not giving him quite the development that I believe he deserved. We'll then talk quickly of the female Silver Surfer, who again, as a character, just shouldn't have been here. We should have got the original Norrin Radd, but I've ranted about that enough in previous videos. Now, to be fair, as a character and a performance, Julie Garner wasn't terrible. She was fine. She was serviceable enough in terms of what the plot required her to be. Now, the overall design and effects of the Silver Surfer was still inferior to the 2000 version. But to be fair, she did have some very good moments. I did like what was probably the best action sequence of the entire movie, where we see Silver Surfer pursuing the ship as the Fantastic Four are trying to escape her. For all of the cosmic and space effects were very good. Some of them were very reminiscent of Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, especially when they opened the supernova in order to try and trap Silver Surfer inside. All of this was very good, very tense, very exciting. We did get a good sense of the Silver Surfer's own powers and abilities, that she was able to catch the ship despite them being in hyperdrive. I would say having Sue literally having contractions and eventually giving birth during this sequence was a bit weird and distracting. I think they overcooked that. Again, I know they're tapping into this comic book source material, that the source of Richard's powers is that he came into contact with the power cosmic, but I just think they could have handled it better here than what we got. It did kind of spoil the flow of the overall intensity. Now, I did like later on where we saw the Silver Surfer being able to disable all of the energy platforms all over the world. This was part of the strategy of Reed Richards to try and teleport the planets away from Galactus's reach. Again, this was a good signal of the awesome power of the Silver Surfer, how she was able to zoom across the locations and destroy the platforms very quickly. You did constantly ask the question as to why she didn't attain Franklin herself rather than Galactus having to do it. She could have done this so easily. Of course, this built up to her interaction with Johnny. And I suppose this sequence was very good. In terms of the overall dynamic between them, I wasn't quite as sure in the whole idea of having Johnny fly around the city and we see all of the transmission screens have that signaling as he was going over her original message. It was a bit of a stretch that Johnny was able to decrypt the surface language, whereas Reed Richards couldn't, but I suppose they had to give Johnny an integral role within the film, and Reed Richards was obviously too distracted in trying to devise the plan for the teleportation. We did go over her origin, which they skimmed through so quickly, it wasn't really worth it. And again, this is another sign of not giving these great characters the full development that they truly deserved. We'll quickly talk about Mole Man, and it seems from a lot of the reactions and reviews that I'm seeing online, a lot of people seem to like Paul Wallerhouse's interpretation. I really hated it. It was much more of that typical Marvel-esque humour where they take a substantial villain from the source material and just turn him into an overall joke. Now, this was following the opening sequence where we had the fast origin retelling of the Fantastic Four in their roles as superheroes. So they were capturing certain moments from the comic books we saw before. And I just felt if you were going to have Mole Man, either have him as a substantial villain or not at all. When we look at the character in terms of his role and his subterranean territory, this could have been potential for a sequel. But alas, it wasn't to be, and again, I just didn't find it funny, but thankfully, they didn't really hinge too much on his overall character. So we'll quickly talk about Sue Storm, and I thought Vanessa Kirby played her character very well. As much with this maternal figure, she had good dynamic with all of the characters. Yes, we saw some back and forth arguments between her and Reed, but it was, I think, a genuine interaction. There were general concerns as to how exactly they were going to stop this invasion. We had some good contemplation as the overall future in terms of their family and the world, and you could see both sides. This wasn't a case of her dominating Reed in any way, shape or form. And I think in terms of her character, they played her much more of this peace broker or this international congressman. Some scenes worked well, other times didn't work quite as well. They didn't really go too much into it. There was that one moment when she has this big old speech in front of everybody following the revelation that Galactus wanted Franklin in exchange for sparing the planet. I did feel it was a bit naive for Reed to reveal that to the press conference. He should have had enough savvy to realise that by telling that, it would have built a massive antagonism from the public against the Fantastic Four. He didn't need to mention that. They just needed to affirm the fact that Galactus was coming and that they needed to stop him. That's all the public needed to know. But in terms of this speech here by Sue, it didn't quite bear credibility because, okay, some people would have understood the fact that they were preserving and protecting their child. But this type of moment, having her stand in front of the crowd, despite this more fantasy setting, you would have at least expected some crowd to be nasty and potentially lynch her. The fact that she stood here all on her own was again trying to project the aura of the character, but it didn't quite work for me. And again, you had to suspend disbelief that nobody here would have tried to lynch her or take the baby away. But overall, a good performance here from Vanessa Kirby. So we'll then move on to the movie's ending, which sees the Fantastic Four trap and send Galactus into the black hole. Silver Surfer comes in at very much the last minute as we see Johnny charge towards him. She moves him out the way and helps pushes Galactus into the void. She gets also sucked into it. Now, whether we'll see either character reappear later on in the MCU, I'm not sure. I would expect maybe at the very least we'll see Silver Surfer come into Avengers Doomsday. Whether it will be Norman Rad, again, we don't know. But as I've mentioned before, you've taken away the whole allure and the novelty of having a unique Silver Surfer movie within this MCU. So whether he comes back or whether Shadowbell comes back, I don't think it really matters at this stage. I can't really see them having Galactus coming back, as that would take away the presence of Doctor Doom. But who knows if Marvel. Avengers Doomsday already has around 30 characters around with some hidden cameos, so I wouldn't be surprised if we saw either character make an appearance in this particular movie. We then go on to the end credits, and to be honest, I found both of them underwhelming. The first one, as usual, is the more substantial one, where we see Sue back at home with Franklin. She goes to get a reading book for him, and then she comes back. She transfers into her energy field, I guess, and then she sees Doctor Doom holding Franklin. We don't see the mask or Robert Downey Jr. Now, what this quite means going for the future, I'm not too sure. And the way that the movie ended kind of contradicts as what we initially thought of how the Fantastic Four were going to be integrated into the MCU timeline following the end credits from the Thunderbolts, where we saw the Fantastic Four ship zooming down. And I initially thought, as many others, that the story in Fantastic Four was going to see them lose the battle against Galactus, where he would consume their world and they would make a last minute escape and they would venture into the current MCU timeline, where they would warn all of the other characters of the looming threat. So maybe it may be a case of the Fantastic Four ship could be Doctor Doom coming into our reality looking to take it over, or maybe some other storyline where Doctor Doom finds a way to take Franklin and move him into this timeline, and then the Fantastic Four will follow him, and that's where we see the ship following through. That seems the more logical case of play here, but again, we will wait and see. They'll have to do some major exposition, as it's been confirmed that we won't see any more MCU content in terms of movies for the next year or so. So we're going to jump straight into Doomsday. So they're going to have to do a lot of explaining into how the Fantastic Four come to this current timeline, as well as Doctor Doom. And again, it just seems like Avengers Doomsday will be an absolute mess, but we will wait and see overall. So there's my thoughts and feelings and spoiler review of the Fantastic Four First Steps. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any other further movies or suggestions regarding any other television series or topics within the current entertainment scene that you'd like to see me cover within the channel, then also let me know within the comments, and I'll see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.